The galaxy was wide, filled with countless worlds, endless stars, and great empires. Among them, the empire of Queen Mira stood as one of the most feared. Her people were tall, strong, and known for their skill in both science and war. Their ships carried weapons that could tear planets apart. Their soldiers were trained from birth to fight without mercy. To many other species, the empire seemed unstoppable. Yet, like all empires, it faced challenges, and one of those challenges came from the rising presence of humanity. Humans were newcomers among the stars. They did not have the oldest fleets or the strongest weapons, but they spread quickly. Their colonies grew in every corner of the galaxy. They adapted to worlds that other races found too harsh. They traded, they built, and most of all, they survived. While other species saw them as simple and even weak, humanity was building a name for itself. Queen Mira had little interest in humans. To her, they were stubborn creatures with small lifespans and too much confidence. She ruled an empire of power and discipline. Humans seemed chaotic to her, like fire that burned bright but faded quickly. However, her council advised her that an alliance with Earth could be useful. Trade, shared defense, and political unity could bring stability. The suggestion that shocked the court was the method of the alliance. The council proposed a royal marriage. Such unions were not uncommon in the galaxy. They bound empires together in ways treaties could not, yet Mira was unwilling at first. She had never considered taking a human as her partner. To her, such a thing felt beneath the dignity of a queen. But politics often demands what pride rejects. After long discussion, after hearing the voices of her council and seeing the value of avoiding another war, Mira agreed. She would take a human husband. It would be symbolic, nothing more. A gesture to show the galaxy that her empire and Earth stood together. The human chosen for this union was named Aaron. He was not a soldier or a ruler. He was a scholar, someone who studied history and culture. Many in the alien court wondered why such a man had been chosen. The truth was simple. Earth believed that sending a man of peace would show respect. They believed Mira did not need another warrior at her side. What she needed was someone who could understand both peoples and bridge the gap. The day of Iran's arrival was met with great ceremony. The alien capital world was a jewel of towers, shining under twin suns. Crowds filled the great plaza as the human ship descended. Soldiers in armor stood in perfect lines. Drums of the empire thundered across the square. Mira watched from her throne high above, her golden crown catching the light. Her eyes were cold, steady, and full of judgment. When Aaron stepped from the ship, he looked small compared to the alien guards. His hair was dark, his face calm, his eyes steady. He wore a simple suit of black and white. Not armor, not royal robes. He bowed to the queen in front of the crowd. His voice, though soft, carried across the plaza as he spoke. I come in peace, with respect, and with hope for unity between our peoples. Some in the crowd laughed quietly. To them, he looked fragile. To them, his words sounded naive. Mira herself said nothing at first. She studied him, this man who was to become her husband. She expected him to tremble under her gaze. Yet he did not. He stood tall, not in pride but in calm acceptance. The ceremony began. Alien priests spoke words of binding, ancient phrases that joined two lives before the empire. Aaron repeated the words carefully, though they were strange to his tongue. Mira spoke them with practiced power, her voice echoing like thunder. When the ritual was complete, the people cheered. The queen had taken a husband and the alliance was sealed. Yet in her heart, Mira felt little. She thought of him as decoration, a symbol to display. She imagined that he would live quietly in her palace, far from matters of importance. He would be safe, he would be honored, but he would not be part of her true rule. That, she believed, was how it would remain. But the days that followed began to surprise her. Aaron did not act like other consorts she had seen in the courts of other empires. He did not seek luxury or power. Instead, he wandered the palace halls, speaking to servants, guards, and workers. He asked about their lives, their families, and their hopes. Mira heard reports that some of her people found his kindness strange but comforting. Others whispered that it was weakness. Yet Mira noticed something important. Wherever Aaron went, people seemed calmer. Disputes lessened and tempers cooled. One evening, Mira invited him to dine with her in the grand hall. The table stretched for many meters, filled with exotic dishes from across the empire. She expected him to be overwhelmed. Yet Aaron ate simply, praising the food with genuine words. Mira watched him in silence until at last she asked, Do you fear me? Aaron looked at her with steady eyes. No, I respect you. Fear is not the same as respect. Those words struck her. Many bowed to her. Many trembled in her presence, but respect without fear was rare. Mira did not show her reaction, but inside she began to wonder. The true test came sooner than expected. A meeting was held between Mira, her council, and delegates from another alien power. Tensions were high, for this rival sought to test the strength of Mira's new alliance with Earth. The council prepared long speeches, full of pride and threats. Aaron, though not asked to speak, was present at Mira's side. When the rival leader mocked humans, calling them fragile creatures who hid behind stronger races, many in the court laughed. Mira felt anger, but before she could respond, Aaron stepped forward. His voice was calm but firm. You see weakness because you only measure strength with weapons. Yet strength is also the will to endure, the courage to rise after every fall, and the hope to build even after destruction. Humanity has all of these, and that is why we stand here today. The hall grew silent. The rival leader frowned, and the laughter stopped. Even Mira's counsel seemed uncertain. Mira herself looked at Aaron with new eyes. He had spoken without fear, not with aggression, but with conviction. His words had power not because of force, but because of truth. That night, Mira stood alone on her balcony looking at the stars. She had believed this marriage was nothing but a symbol. She had believed Aaron was nothing more than a quiet decoration. Yet already he was changing the way her court looked at humans. Already he had shown a strength that was not measured in the ways she had always known. She felt a stir of curiosity, something rare for a queen who had seen much in her long reign. Perhaps this human was more than she had thought. Perhaps the alliance meant more than politics. And deep within, though she did not admit it even to herself, Mira felt the first spark of respect, not for the idea of humanity, not for the alliance, but for the man who had spoken with calm courage in her hall. It was the beginning of something neither queen nor council could have predicted. The union between Queen Mira and the human named Aaron spread across the galaxy like fire through dry fields. Some worlds celebrated the alliance as a symbol of peace, while others mocked it as a sign of weakness. To many, the idea that a queen of such power would join with a fragile human seemed almost humorous. But while the galaxy whispered, life in the Empire moved forward. Mira returned to her throne and her endless duties. She believed the marriage was sealed, the alliance secure, and her empire steady. Aaron was meant to be only a symbol, a companion who stood quietly at her side while she continued her reign. Yet slowly, he was becoming more than that. In the palace, Aaron spent his time among the people. He listened to the cooks as they spoke of the stress of feeding thousands of soldiers. He listened to the guards who shared the burden of standing watch day and night. He even spoke to farmers who came to the palace with supplies, learning about the difficulties of their trade. Mira often received reports of these conversations, and she began to realize something unusual. Wherever Aaron walked, he left calm in his steps. People felt lighter after speaking to him. They began to see him not only as a foreigner, but as someone who understood. Mira kept her thoughts quiet. She was a queen. Her mind was trained to see threats, not wonders. Still, when she passed Iran in the halls, she found herself watching him longer than she expected. One evening, as the suns dipped below the horizon and the city lights began to glow, Mira called him to her private chamber. The room was vast, with high windows and golden walls. Mira sat at her table, her eyes sharp and curious. "Do you know what many in this empire say of you?" she asked. Aaron stood calmly across from her. "I imagine they think I am out of place. A man of earth in the palace of stars." Mira allowed a faint smile. "They say you are weak. They say you are nothing more than a guest wearing the title of consort. Some call you a shadow in the light of the crown." Aaron's answer was simple. "A shadow still has value. Without it, one cannot see how bright the light truly is." Mira stared at him. She had spoken to generals, rulers, and philosophers across the galaxy. Few answered with such quiet strength. She leaned back in her chair, unsettled but intrigued. Before she could speak again, a messenger burst into the chamber. He knelt, his voice tense. "My queen, urgent news. Our border fleet has been struck. The Dravari are advancing." At once the air grew heavy. The Dravari were one of the Empire's most dangerous rivals. They were brutal raiders who thrived on war. Their fleets had tested Mira's forces for decades, never fully defeated, always seeking a weakness. For them to attack now, just as the marriage with Earth was fresh, was no coincidence. Mira rose to her full height. Summon the council. Prepare the fleet. Aaron remained silent as Mira swept from the chamber, yet inside his mind raced. The council chamber was filled with tension. Generals laid out maps of the star systems under threat. The Dravari had launched raids into 3 colonies at once, striking trade routes and resource worlds. Their speed was greater than expected and their numbers large. Mira studied the reports with a cold, steady gaze. "We will gather the fleets and crush them," one general declared. "We must show them that the Empire bows to none." Another countered, "If we divide our fleets across all fronts, we may lose everything. Better to protect the core worlds and let the colonies fall. They can be retaken later." Arguments rose, voices clashing like swords. Mira listened, but her mind searched for balance. To defend all meant to risk spreading too thin. To abandon colonies meant weakness in the eyes of allies. Through it all, Aaron sat quietly at the side of the chamber. He had not been invited to speak. This was not his place. Yet as he listened, patterns began to form in his mind. He remembered his studies of ancient Earth wars, battles where smaller forces triumphed through strategy rather than strength. At last, when silence fell for a moment, Aaron spoke. "There is another way." The generals turned toward him with disdain. One scoffed. "This is no matter for you, human. Stay silent." But Mira raised a hand. "Let him speak." Aaron stood and stepped to the map. His voice was calm, his hand steady as he pointed to the colonies under attack. "The Dravari strike here, here, and here. They spread their forces wide to draw yours the same way. But if you look closer, these raids are not random. They are lines that point to this sector." His finger rested on a quiet system near the border. "They are trying to lure your fleets away to open a path here. If you send a strong but hidden defense there, while allowing your main fleets to appear distracted, you may catch them when they strike their true target." The chamber was silent. The generals exchanged uncertain glances. Mira studied him, her eyes narrowing. "How do you know this?" one general asked. Aaron answered with steady calm. "Because I have seen it before. Not in space, but on Earth. Armies on my world once used the same trick. The battlefield changes, but the mind of war does not." Mira leaned forward. She could see the logic in his words. It was daring, but it was possible. She looked to her council. "Prepare the fleets as he suggests." The generals hesitated, but none dared to refuse their queen. Days later, the Empire's fleets moved. The Dravari believed the colonies had drawn away the queen's strength. Confident, they launched their main assault into the quiet sector. Yet as they arrived, hidden ships of the Empire burst from the shadows of moons and asteroids. Trapped, the Dravari forces were torn apart in a storm of fire. The battle was not easy. Many lives were lost. But the Dravari's main fleet was shattered, their momentum broken. The colonies held and the Empire stood strong. When the news reached the capital, the people cheered their queen's wisdom. Yet whispers soon followed. For those who served closest to the throne, it was clear that the key idea had not come from Mira's generals. It had come from Aaron, the human consort. Mira stood on her balcony as the city celebrated below. Aaron joined her quietly, gazing at the glowing streets. She studied him, her pride and her caution both stirring. "You changed the course of a war," she said. "How did you see what my generals did not?" Aaron smiled faintly. "Because I was not trained only to see strength. I was trained to see patterns, to listen, to learn from the past. Sometimes the smallest detail can change everything." Mira turned away, her thoughts heavy. She had always believed strength was in power, in armies and weapons. Yet this man had shown a different strength. Not the force of arms, but the force of mind. In the days that followed, the Empire began to look at Iran differently. Some respected him. Others grew jealous, fearing his influence. Mira herself felt a storm inside her. She was proud of her victory, yet she knew it was not hers alone. She began to wonder if she had underestimated humans not just once, but many times. Aaron did not seek glory. He did not boast of his role. He continued to walk the palace, speaking with people, listening, sharing quiet words. To Mira, this humility was strange. Leaders she had known would have demanded honor, demanded to be raised high. Aaron seemed content simply to serve. But deep in her heart, Mira began to feel the truth. This man, whom she had taken as nothing more than a symbol, was becoming something far greater. And though she would never say it aloud, a question began to form within her. What other powers did this human hold? Powers that no alien ruler had ever seen. It was only the beginning, and the galaxy would soon learn that the quiet human at the Queen's side was far from ordinary. The Empire had survived the first wave of the Dravari thanks to Aran's insight. The victory strengthened Queen Mira's rule and the people praised her wisdom. Yet whispers spread in every corner of the palace. Everyone knew the quiet human had spoken words that saved fleets and worlds. Some saw this as a blessing, but others felt uneasy. They had always believed humans were weak. Now, with Aran walking among them, that belief began to shake. Mira herself was conflicted. She stood before her generals with calm authority, her crown gleaming under the lights of the throne room. But in her private thoughts, she could not ignore what Aran had done. He had changed the course of war not with weapons but with his mind. She had always trusted power, but Aran showed that another kind of power existed, one she had never fully understood. Aran, meanwhile, did not seek honor or reward. He spent his days as before, walking among workers and soldiers, listening to their worries. He asked no special treatment. He was content to share simple meals and simple words. Yet wherever he went, the air changed. People felt lighter in his presence. Some called it strange. Others called it human. One morning, Mira received reports from a distant colony world named Vera. The colony had been shaken by earthquakes and storms. Supplies were short and fear ran high among the settlers. The governor of the colony sent desperate messages for help. Mira ordered aid ships to be sent at once. "You will stay here," she told Aran as they discussed the matter in her chamber. "This is no place for you. The colony is far and dangerous." Aran shook his head. "If I am to be part of your empire, then I must see it not only in its strength but also in its struggle." "Let me go with the aid ships," Mira frowned. Her first thought was to refuse. Yet she saw in his eyes the same calm courage he had shown in the council chamber. She sighed and nodded. "Very well, but you will be guarded. If danger comes, you must obey the guards without question." Aran bowed his head. "I will respect your command." The journey to Vera was long, and when the ships arrived, the colony was in chaos. Buildings lay broken. Streets were flooded from heavy storms. Families huddled together in fear. The governor tried to keep order, but his voice carried little weight. When Aran stepped from the ship, he was met with doubtful stares. To the colonists, he looked small compared to Mira's armored soldiers. Some even whispered, "This is the Queen's chosen. What can he do here?" Yet Aran did not take offense. He moved among the people, speaking gently, asking questions. He helped carry supplies, even though his strength was less than that of the soldiers. He sat with children and told them stories of Earth, stories of rivers and forests, stories of cities rebuilt after disasters. Slowly, the fear in their eyes began to fade. That night, as the settlers gathered in the main square, Aran climbed onto a broken pillar. His voice carried across the crowd, "I know you are afraid. I know your homes are broken and your hearts are heavy. But hear me. On my world too, we faced storms and quakes. We faced fire, flood, and war. Each time we thought we were broken, we rose again. Not because we were the strongest, not because we had the best weapons, but because we chose to stand together. That is the true power of humanity. It is the power to rise again. And you, though not human, share that same spirit. You are not alone. The Queen has not forgotten you. We will rebuild this world together." For a long moment, silence filled the square. Then slowly voices rose. A cheer began with one family, then spread to the rest. The colonists lifted their hands, shouting with renewed hope. The governor, who had struggled to keep order for weeks, looked at Aran with wide eyes. "They would not listen to me. Yet with only a few words, you gave them courage. How is this possible?" Aran smiled gently. "Because I did not speak as a ruler. I spoke as a man who has known fear, as one who believes in rising again." When Mira received reports of what had happened on Vera, she was silent for a long time. She sat in her throne room, reading the messages again and again. Her generals praised Aran's role in calming the people. Her council murmured uneasily, saying his voice carried too much weight. One counselor warned, "If he continues like this, the people may begin to look to him more than to you." "My queen," Mira's eyes turned cold, "do you think my rule is so weak that a few words can shake it?" The counselor bowed quickly. "Of course not, my queen. But his influence grows." That night, Mira found herself on her balcony looking out at the stars. She remembered Aran's words in the council chamber, his calm voice in her dining hall, and now the reports of him speaking to frightened colonists. She realized something she had never considered. Power was not only in crowns, armies, and fleets. Power was also in the ability to give hope. Aaron returned from Vera some days later. Mira greeted him in the great hall, surrounded by her guards and council. She studied him carefully, but his face was the same calm mask she had come to know. "You gave my people hope," she said. "They gave themselves hope," Aaron replied. "I only reminded them it was there." The council shifted uneasily at his words. Some feared his growing reputation. Others doubted him still. But Mira, though proud, could not ignore the truth. The change in the empire was subtle but real. Workers in the palace spoke of Aaron with respect. Soldiers remembered his calm words. Colonists whispered that the queen's human consort carried a strength unlike any they had seen. But not everyone welcomed this. Some in the court began to resent Aaron. They saw him as a danger to the balance of power. They whispered that he might one day challenge the queen herself. They began to plot in shadows, thinking of ways to weaken him. Mira was aware of these whispers. She could have silenced them with fear, but she chose not to. She wanted to see what path Aaron would walk. Would he seek power for himself, or would he remain as he had always been, quiet, humble, yet unshakably strong? One evening she tested him. "Aaron," she said as they walked together in the gardens of the palace, "the people grow to admire you. Some even look to you more than to their queen. Do you not desire this power? Do you not wish to rule?" Aaron stopped beneath the glowing trees. His eyes met hers, steady as always. "I did not come here to rule. I came here because our peoples needed unity. I married you because I believed together we could build that. If the people look to me, it is only because I remind them of something they already have. I do not wish to take your throne, Mira. I wish only to stand beside you." For the first time, Mira felt her heart shift. She had heard many voices in her life, voices of generals, rulers, and warriors. Yet none had spoken with such simple honesty. She believed him. Still, the galaxy was not quiet. The Dravari had been defeated once, but they were not destroyed. Other rivals watched the empire, waiting for weakness. Inside the court, jealousy and fear grew. Mira began to sense that greater trials lay ahead, but she also sensed something else. Aaron, the human she had once thought to be only a symbol, was becoming more than she could ever have expected. He carried no sword, commanded no fleet, yet he had the power to change hearts, calm storms of fear, and inspire unity. It was a power beyond strength. Mira, queen of a mighty empire, stood in her chamber that night and whispered to herself, "Perhaps I am not the only one who rules here. Perhaps he rules in a way I never could." And though she did not yet call it love, she felt a bond growing, stronger than crowns, stronger than armies. The galaxy had not yet seen the full measure of Aaron's strength, but soon it would. The empire celebrated its victory over the Dravari, but peace never lasted long in the galaxy. Rivals watched the queen's realm with sharp eyes. Whispers filled the courts, not only of enemies beyond the stars, but of unrest within. The Dravari had been beaten once, yet they were not destroyed. They gathered their strength in the shadows, preparing for another strike. Inside Mira's palace, another storm was brewing. The council, once united, was divided. Some praised Aaron for his wisdom and saw him as a gift to the empire. Others saw him as a danger. They feared that the people would come to follow him instead of their queen. Jealousy grew in the hearts of powerful nobles. One night, as Mira sat at her table reading reports of the colonies, she overheard two counselors whispering outside her chamber. "The people cheer for him, not her," one hissed. "If this continues, we will bow to a human instead of our queen." "Then we must act," the other answered. "We must remind the queen where her true loyalty lies. He must be removed." Mira's eyes grew cold. She did not step out, but she listened. The words struck her like hidden blades. She had expected whispers, but she had not thought her counsel would go so far. That night she paced her chamber, her heart heavy. Aaron was no threat to her rule, but she feared that others would not see the truth. The Dravari struck again soon after. This time they came not with scattered raids, but with a united force stronger than before. Whole fleets of warships darkened the skies of the border worlds. Their goal was clear: to break the Queen's empire once and for all. Messages of fear poured into the capital. Colonies begged for help. Soldiers prepared for war. Mira stood tall before her generals, her voice strong. "We will meet them in battle. The empire will not fall while I hold the crown." Aaron stood at her side, silent but watchful. He could see the weight pressing on Mira's shoulders. She carried not only the duty of battle but the burden of distrust within her own court. As fleets prepared to depart, Mira called Aran into her private chamber. The room was quiet, filled only with the glow of starlight through the tall windows. She looked at him long as though searching his soul. "The Dravari come with fire and destruction," she said. "I must lead my people to war. But I fear more than the enemy. I fear betrayal within. There are those who think you weaken me. They may strike at you while I am away." Aaron's voice was calm. "Then let them strike at me. Better me than you." Mira's eyes flashed. "Do not say such things. Your life is not meant to be thrown away. You are my husband, and you are part of this empire now." Aaron stepped closer. "Then let me prove it. Let me go with your soldiers. Let me stand where the danger is greatest. If I die serving beside you. If I live, your people will see that a human can bleed and fight for them." Mira hesitated. She had never wanted him on the battlefield. He was not a soldier. Yet something in his words stirred her heart. He was not asking to lead fleets. He was asking to stand as one of them. At last she nodded. "Very well. But you will be watched, guarded. I will not let you fall without a fight." The fleets launched. Great warships, shining like blades of light, tore across the stars toward the border. The Dravari came in endless waves, their black ships blotting out suns. The clash of empires shook the void itself. Aaron found himself among soldiers on one of the forward ships. They looked at him with doubt at first. To them he was still the Queen's strange consort, a man with no armor, no training. But when the fighting began, Aaron did not hide. He moved among them, speaking calm words, steadying their hearts. When explosions rocked the ship, he carried the wounded. When fear spread, he reminded them of the strength that came from unity. He was no warrior, but his presence gave courage. Soldiers who once doubted him began to fight with greater fire, as if his spirit had become their shield. Meanwhile, in the command ship, Mira led the battle with iron resolve. Her voice rang through the fleet, her commands sharp and unyielding, but even as she directed the war, she thought of Aran. She worried not for her empire alone, but for the man who had chosen to stand in danger's path. The council's whispers did not end. Even during the war, some sought to betray Aaron. A group of officers, secretly guided by jealous nobles, planned to abandon him in the heat of battle. They believed his death would end his influence and restore the Queen's focus to them, but their plan failed. When Dravari ships broke through one flank, Aran stood in the path of retreating soldiers. His voice carried over the chaos. "Do not run, stand. If you hold together, you will live. If you scatter, you will fall." Something in his voice struck the soldiers. They rallied, holding their ground against overwhelming odds until reinforcements arrived. The officers who had planned betrayal were trapped by their own cowardice, while Aaron stood firm. Word of this spread quickly through the fleet. Soldiers began to whisper not only of the Queen's strength but of the human's courage. Mira heard these whispers too. Instead of jealousy, she felt pride. For the first time, she no longer thought of Aaron as a symbol. She thought of him as her equal. The battle raged for days. Stars burned with fire as ships clashed, and the void was filled with wreckage. Mira's fleets began to falter under the endless assault. The Dravari pressed harder, their ships flooding in like shadows. On the third night of the war, Mira stood in the command hall, her crown tilted with sweat and weariness. Her generals spoke of retreat. "We cannot hold, my queen. If we remain, we risk losing everything." Mira's voice cut through their fear. "We do not retreat. Not while one star of this empire still burns." Then Aaron's voice came through the comms. He was on a battered ship at the front, his face pale but steady. "Listen to me," he said to the fleet. "The Dravari believe they have broken us. They believe we will scatter. But we are not broken. We are one people. Stand with your queen, stand with your brothers and sisters. Show them that we are stronger together than they are in numbers. Fight not for victory, but for each other." The word spread across the fleet. Soldiers cheered, captains raised their voices, and the weary were lifted. With renewed strength, the Empire's forces struck back. Mira herself led the final charge, her flagship breaking through the Dravari line. Aaron's ship followed close, its guns blazing though it was nearly destroyed. Together, queen and human, they turned the tide. The Dravari, stunned by the renewed fire, broke and fled into the darkness of the stars. When the battle ended, silence filled the void. Ships drifted among the wreckage of friend and foe alike. The Empire had suffered greatly, but it had survived. The Dravari were beaten once more, their fleets shattered. Mira stood on her bridge, her body weary but her spirit burning bright. She thought of Iran somewhere among the surviving ships. She sent orders at once to bring him to her. When he arrived covered in ash and bruises, she felt something she had never felt before. Relief. She stepped toward him, her voice soft for the first time in many years. "You stood with them," she said. "You gave them courage when even my general spoke of retreat." Aaron bowed his head. "I only reminded them of what they already carried inside." Mira reached out and touched his shoulder. "No, you gave them more. You gave them hope when even I could not." The soldiers who watched this exchange would remember it for the rest of their lives. In that moment, Queen and human stood not as ruler and consort, but as partners in war. When they returned to the capital, the people filled the streets with cheers. They praised Mira as their indomitable queen, but they also praised Aaron, the human who had stood on the battlefield, who had spoken words that turned despair into strength. The council was uneasy. Their plan to weaken him had failed. Instead, he had become more respected than ever. Mira knew they still whispered in shadows, but she no longer cared. She had seen Aaron's loyalty, his courage, his unshakable heart. He had chosen to protect her and her empire even when betrayed. That night, as Mira stood beside Aaron on the balcony, the city glowing below them, she spoke softly. "Once I thought you were nothing more than a symbol, a name for an alliance, but now I see the truth. You are more than that. You are the strength I did not know I needed." Aaron turned his eyes toward her. "And you are the strength I could never be. Alone we are limited. Together, we are whole." Mira's heart, once made of iron and fire, softened. For the first time in her long reign, she felt not only respect but something deeper. She had found a partner not by blood or by crown, but by choice and by loyalty. The galaxy had seen the trial of war. It had seen the loyalty of a human who stood against fear and betrayal. But greater challenges still waited beyond the stars. And Mira knew that whatever came, she and Aaron would face it together. The war with the Dravari ended, but peace was fragile. The Empire celebrated victory, yet scars remained. Entire fleets were destroyed, colonies were burned, and families mourned. Mira, the queen, walked through the capital streets in silence, not wearing her crown but a plain cloak. She wanted to see her people without the veil of power. What she saw weighed on her heart. Children played among broken buildings, their laughter thin against the silence of ruin. Merchants struggled to rebuild, and families lit candles for the ones who never returned. Her empire had survived, but the cost was heavy. Beside her walked Aaron, his eyes filled with the same sorrow. He placed a hand on Mira's arm. "They are alive because of you. Do not carry all this pain as if it is your fault." Mira shook her head. "It is not enough to survive. They must thrive again. And for that I must give more than war. I must give them a future." Aaron nodded. "Then let us build it together." But not everyone wanted peace. The council was restless. Some nobles, jealous of Aaron's growing influence, gathered in secret halls. They whispered that a human had no place in the Empire's future. They feared he would one day sit on the throne beside Mira, turning her strength into weakness. One night, a messenger loyal to the queen brought news of a plot. The nobles planned to put Mira on trial in the council chamber. They would claim she was blinded by her love for Aaron and unfit to rule. They would not dare kill her openly, but they would try to strip her crown through law and manipulation. Mira listened to the messenger, her jaw set like stone. So they choose politics while enemies still lurk beyond the stars. Let them come. I will not bow to shadows. Aaron, standing near the window, spoke calmly. Then face them with truth. Do not fight them with threats, but with proof of your strength. Show them that the Empire is stronger because you chose me, not weaker. Mira's eyes softened. And what if they do not listen? Then they will listen to the people, Aaron said. Because they saw the truth in battle. They will not forget. The day of the council trial came. The great chamber was filled with lords, generals, and advisors. The walls echoed with murmurs. Some supported the queen, others doubted her. Aaron stood at her side, though many glares burned against him. The head counselor, an old rival named Duran, rose to speak. His voice was sharp and cold. Our queen is strong, yes, but strength means little if it is blinded by foreign influence. She has bound herself to a human, one untrained in our ways, one unworthy of her station. His words sway our soldiers, his presence weakens her authority. How long before he rules in her place? The chamber filled with mutters. Mira stood tall, her crown gleaming. Her voice rang like a blade. I chose Aaron not to rule in my place but to stand with me. In the war you all remember, when even my generals faltered, who gave courage to our fleets? Who stood where your traitorous officers would not? A human, yes, but one who bled for this empire as if it were his own. Darren sneered. Words, nothing more. Aaron then stepped forward. His voice was quiet but carried through the chamber. I am not here to take her crown. I do not need a throne. I need only the chance to serve beside her. If that offends you, then you do not understand loyalty. I will never ask for power. I will only give my strength where it is needed. The chamber fell silent. Even those who doubted felt the truth in his tone. Mira looked at the faces around her, and she knew hearts were shifting. The trial ended not in her defeat, but in her triumph. The council voted to keep her crown. Darren left the chamber with rage hidden behind his eyes, but his power had been broken. Afterward, the empire began to heal. Mira and Aaron traveled across the colonies, visiting cities torn by war. They brought aid, rebuilt homes, and spoke to the people. Wherever they went, the crowds gathered not out of fear, but with hope. Children carried flowers. Soldiers saluted with pride, and elders bowed with respect. Mira had always ruled with iron, but now she ruled with both iron and compassion. Aaron's presence reminded her of what her empire truly needed, not only victory, but unity. One evening, as the two stood on a rebuilt balcony overlooking a valley of lights, Mira spoke softly. Do you know what they call you now? Aaron raised an eyebrow. What is it? They call you the heart of the empire, she said. And they call me its crown. Aaron chuckled lightly. Then together we are complete. Mira looked at him and her voice softened more than ever. Together we are more than that. We are the promise of a future they never thought possible. Yet peace did not come without final tests. The Dravari, though shattered, had not disappeared. Scouts reported that their queen still lived, hidden among broken worlds. She sent messengers offering a final duel, not of fleets, but of rulers. If Mira refused, the Dravari promised endless raids. If she accepted, the fate of both peoples would be decided in one confrontation. The council begged her to refuse, but Mira agreed. If I defeat her, this war ends for good. If I fall, then let my empire be led by those who remain. Aaron stood firm. If you fight, then I fight with you. Mira shook her head. This is my duel, Aaron, my crown, my battle. But Aaron did not move. Your crown, yes, but not your burden alone. I will not lift a weapon if you forbid it, but I will stand beside you. Not as king, not as soldier, as your husband. Mira looked into his eyes and saw truth she could not deny. She gave a small nod. Then stand with me. The duel was held on a barren world between empires. Both sides gathered, fleets watching from orbit. In the center of the battlefield stood two queens, Mira, in armor of silver and blue, and the Dravari queen, cloaked in black scales. Aaron stood a step behind Mira, silent, his eyes steady. The Dravari queen sneered. So the stories are true. You let a human follow you like a shadow. Tell me, Mira, do you fear me so much that you need him to hold your hand? Mira's voice cut through the air. I do not fear you. I only stand with those I trust. Something you will never understand. The duel began. Blades clashed, the ground shook. Mira fought with skill honed by years of war, but the Dravari queen was fierce, her strength born of hate. Sparks flew with each strike. As the fight dragged on, the Dravari queen mocked. Your empire is weak. Your love for him has softened you. Mira struck back, her voice like thunder. Love does not weaken. It strengthens. Aaron, though unarmed, stood steady, shouting words of strength to Mira when her body faltered. His voice gave her focus, reminding her that she was not alone. At last, with a final strike, Mira disarmed her rival and brought her to the ground. She stood over the fallen queen and declared, This war ends now. Your people will live if they accept peace. If they refuse, they will be nothing but dust. The Dravari queen, beaten, gave no answer. Her soldiers, watching from orbit, laid down arms. The war was finally over. The empire rejoiced. Mira returned victorious, and the Dravari threat ended for generations to come. The people hailed her as the crown that never bowed, and they hailed Aaron as the heart that never wavered. That night, in the palace garden, Mira and Aaron walked beneath the stars. The air was quiet, the world at last at peace. Mira spoke softly. When I chose you, I thought only of alliance. I never dreamed you would become my strength, my partner, my heart. Without you, I might have won wars. But with you, I have won more. I have one piece, Aaron smiled gently. And I never dreamed I would find love among the stars. You gave me a place, a purpose, and together we gave hope to countless lives. They stood hand in hand looking at the endless galaxy before them. Mira the crown, Aaron the heart. Together they had faced betrayal, war, and hatred. Together they had proven that love and loyalty could change the fate of empires. The alien queen who once doubted the power of a human now knew the truth. His true power was not strength of body or might of arms. It was loyalty, courage, and love. And it was that power that would guide their empire into a brighter future.